So if we look firstly at the expansion of flexible space, and this is some of the key sort of office locations at a global level. And you can see over the period 2016 to 2017, there's been relatively rapid expansion across all these major cities. But the real standout for me is London. 1,136 flexible centres, more than the other cities combined. Why? Well, you might argue it's because the landlord community for years and years has perhaps been the most rigid landlord on a global basis. And what we've seen is we've seen a reaction from the sector to provide what occupiers want. But as we see, if we look specifically at co-working, and these are figures from Desmag, that over the last 4 years, the number of centres has increased from just under 9 million to just under 19 million, and forecast to continue to increase. Meanwhile, and this becomes really, really important when we discuss later on, the number of members in the co-working sector has increased from roughly 500,000 to nearly 2 million, and is expected to reach circa 4 million by the end of 2022.
So we ask in our European Occupier survey, which was released earlier this year, 114 clients, we said, what's your appetite for flexible office space currently, and what's it like in the next 3 years? Well, what you can see at the top of that chart there is currently 30% say they're using flexible office space moderately or substantially, but that rises to 45% in the next 3 years. So and conversely, obviously, at the bottom on the negligible and not at all side, we see that reduction. So the appetite is there, but we've really got to ask ourselves why. Cost reduction, as I mentioned, it's a practical real estate solution to really drive down those costs across portfolios. It's speed to market, and this is something that I think is often overlooked from the corporate side, is when they're, particularly in, for instance, the technology industry sector, which is growing rapidly, how can they enter markets, come out of markets quickly without really committing too quickly and for too long, rather, to office space? Well, speed to market, flexible office space. Flexibility in leases, again, really helping that cost reduction. And then finally, access to talent. This is another thing that's really kind of contributing to the broad reasons why occupiers are using this sort of space. And we asked that question in our survey, but I think interestingly, you'll see the top 3 options here are really practical real estate reasons for using flexible space: reducing costs, needing a short-term space solution, and increasing flexibility in leasing terms. They are all the most popular reasons for using this sort of space, as our corporate occupiers say. But they're declining in popularity. The 2 that are increasing in popularity this year versus last year have been promoting innovation and attracting and retaining talent. So that's saying to us that it's not just the practical real estate reasons, it's the cultural agenda that really is starting to drive some of this appetite for flexible space. So that's the occupier. Let's talk about the supply side, the landlord response. At the moment, it's been largely driven by, obviously, the operator community, and landlords are really trying to grapple with how to deal with this. But taking a step back at a kind of wider scale, let's look at the EMEA investor attitudes towards co-working, another recent survey we've launched recently. Their attitudes are positive, but they're still maturing. So 27% and 30% mentioned that a co-working allocation in an office building that they own is an amenity for other tenants, and it's the future. And this is the future of the workplace, so it should be embraced. Actually, only a small portion of the sample said, they were approaching it with a bit of caution. They were saying, they're a credit risk, so we should avoid them, or they're unprofitable in the long term, so, we're not really going to play in that arena. That was only 9% and 7% respectively. But then there is still a large chunk, 33%, that are still maturing. They have a maturity about how they're going about this, and they are yet to form a strong conclusion about co-working and flexible office and how they're going to deal with it.
So another survey this time, but of over 100 landlord developers within the UK, and you can see the questions they asked, but I want you just to focus on two things. First, it's here to stay. I would say that's slightly wrong. I would say it's not becoming mainstream. I would say we've passed that. It is mainstream, and it's not a fad. And that's the two key points to take from one aspect of it. But the other aspect is how they see it as a complement for their existing portfolio. And this is really, really important, because when we speak with occupiers, they tell us they want flexibility, but also they can see the benefits of the traditional lease. And they're more likely to take space in a building where there is flexible space in that building or adjacent to that building. And landlords are slowly responding to this, and we're starting to see the likes of, for instance, British Land with the Story brand, the Crown Estate, who are announcing or have announced that they will be launching a flexible platform for their wider estate. There is a response, and we would expect more landlords to respond.
So what next? What are the key takeaways? It is a permanent structural feature. The flexible office is a permanent structural feature of the market. Not just in the UK, not just in London, not just in the rest of the UK, but globally. Because corporations are global and they seek this sort of flexibility throughout their corporate real estate portfolios. So it is a permanent structural feature of real estate markets. Occupier demand is strong and it's growing. There is a fundamental shift in how occupiers are taking real estate decisions, and it's that journey from efficient to effective. And the ones that are really going to, the operators and the landlords that are really going to thrive in this flexible, agile workspace phenomenon are the ones that realize that corporates are on this trajectory. And again, maintain that conversation to help them achieve that journey. Impact on asset value, big question. It will become clearer as markets mature. As Kevin said on probably his second slide around the size of the London market. As that market starts to mature and there's more evidence, there's more data, people will come to more concrete conclusions. And then finally, what is the landlord response? Well, they're assessing their options and considering the implications. It's not going to happen overnight. They're conscious of disruption, but they're also very conscious that they've got to innovate. And as I was saying, therefore that's the challenge, but moreover it's the opportunity for landlords to really, and operators to really meet that changing occupier demand.